I'm too old? You're a convicted felon. Let's start there. I went below to with you. We can put out the receipts. You bought me flights before. You've given me money before. You just sent me 5 bands the other day.
Another plot surprise overshadows the drama itself, just when you thought the Blueface circus was finally over. Hazel E. and Chrisean Rock utterly appended the internet by accusing Blueface of using them, dismissing them, and then acting as though they were the problem. Now, both women are revealing details that might destroy her career, such as consecutive emotional breakdowns, covert conversations, and questionable intentions. If you thought this was simply another minor celebrity crash, you ought to think twice, because the gloves are off and the truth is messy. Blueface might finally be facing the consequences he has been dodging for years. Put on your seatbelt because this is going to get wild fast. The internet thought it had already seen every possible turn in the Blueface Chrisean Hazel e-tale. But no one could predict what would come next. Everything started out too gently. No fighting, no emotional Instagram lives. And no sub-tweet stop behind the scenes, though. Two women who had experienced the same cycle eventually compared notes and found they had something in common that Blueface had never expected. They both felt used, manipulated, and discarded like props in his never-ending chaos show. Hazel E., who usually stays away from the current chaos, was the first person to go back online. At first, a few ambiguous statements about industry men who pretend they're loyal but treat women like disposable storylines seemed innocuous. Nobody took it seriously until she expressly brought up Blueface in a comment thread. Like a wildfire, social media exploded. Hazel E. said that she had been forced into situations she did not want to be in by manipulation, coercion, and gaslighting. She said that before trying to paint herself as the problem. Blueface took advantage of her relationships, sold her dreams, and exhausted her. On the other side of the internet, Chrisean Rock was going through her own tempest. Her relationship with Blueface has always been public warfare, involving fights, breakups, loud altercations, pregnancy drama, custody disputes, accusations, police charges, and enough money to fund 10 reality shows? Many thought she was done after the baby issue, the charges of adultery, and being teased online. But she wasn't done. She was confused. Confused because no matter how much she contributed, Blueface continually found new ways to emotionally drain her and publicly humiliate her. And when he no longer required her and she didn't fit his storyline, he threw her out of the picture like an old prop. At first, neither Hazel E. nor Chrisean realized that someone else was speaking out. Hazel E. thought she was the only one who was criticizing him. Chrisean thought that everyone was tired of hearing her side of the tale. But when bloggers started connecting the connections and posting their quotes side by side, the internet found that two ladies with very different personalities and histories were expressing oddly similar experiences about the same man. One talked about controlling feelings. The other talked of psychological exhaustion. They both talked about being humiliated. When they stopped upholding his reputation, they both talked about being replaced. The narrative abruptly changed course. There was a pattern here. This was no longer crazy Chrisean. It was no longer messy Hazel. But this is where things get crazy. Hazel E. claims that Blueface portrayed himself as a strategic opportunist. A man who becomes friends with women when he needs something from them and then disappears when their value declines. Whether it was through influence, publicity, emotional work, or fighting to keep his name popular, he always obtained what he wanted and left chaos in his wake. She hinted that she has witnessed him emotionally abusing women to further his own agenda. Conversely, Chrisean depicted a more sinister vision, one based on manipulation and reliance. She claimed to be faithful to him, although all he gave her was pain. She claimed that in order to maintain control, he purposely kept her unstable, bewildered, and alone. She said he wanted her broken so she wouldn't be able to leave. This time, she wasn't crying over it either. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't screaming. She was too calm. That calm made the story hurt even more. It was not drama, but clarity. And for someone who depends on confusion to maintain control, Clarence poses a threat. The real explosion, though, happened when Chrisean and Hazel E. quietly acknowledged each other's experiences on social media. No, they didn't collaborate. They are no longer best pals. But they did something far more powerful. They gave each other affirmation without saying. Hazel E. liked a comment that called Blueface a serial user. Chrisean liked the term "he did Hazel" like "he did you," which caused the bloggers to go crazy. Fans started asking questions like, did Blueface utilize the same manipulation tactic on all the women in his vicinity? Did he take advantage of their emotions for his own benefit? Was everything we saw online just his method of staying up to date? Are Chrisean and Hazel finally exposing his true nature? In reality, though, the warning signs were always there. Blueface's entire public persona has been built on chaos. He is content in his relationships. He live streams arguments. He profits from them. And his breakups are due to marketing.clickbait is his apology. Until he gets bored and moves on to the next woman he can entice into his orbit, everything turns into a plot. Hazel E. said she couldn't understand how someone could need you one day and act like you never existed the next. Chrisean said she lost herself trying to love someone who only loved using people. 2. Different claims. The same mental injury. Suddenly, the women were no longer being made fun of on the internet. It involved looking at the pattern. Fans brought up old videos of Blueface, publicly dismissing Chrisean, making fun of her feelings, and acting possessive one minute and cold the next. What's the craziest part? The comments were now pointing out the connections they had missed instead of blaming the women. A few hours later, Chrisean posted, "You don't realize you've been used until the person doesn't need you anymore." Videos in which Hazel seemed uncomfortable but remained silent to avoid criticism. Videos in which he exploited the suffering of one woman to encourage another. Videos in which he boasted about anarchy, control, and indifference. I gave it my all and was rewarded. It's the same conclusion, two different realities. Somehow, two women who had never collaborated shared the exact same story, once categorized as dramatic. Two women were now exposing something deeper than drama, a man who was reliant on chaos and control. At that moment, something changed on the internet. Instead of viewing Hazel E. and Chrisean Rock as rivals or villains, people started to see them as survivors of the same cycle of manipulation. They were being taken seriously. What about Blueface? Suddenly, everyone on the internet was staring at him. If the emotional repercussions was shown in part 1, the receipts, reversals, and behind the scenes, manipulation are ultimately revealed in part 2. Because the internet didn't just respond when Hazel E. and Chrisean unintentionally shared their stories, it began looking into them. Additionally, history has demonstrated that when the internet looks into Blueface, it always uncovers something. The first significant change was the appearance of earlier footage of Hazel E., in which she was scared, quiet, and obviously trying to win over someone off camera. The tone, the awkward pauses, the forced smiles, all of them created a picture that she had never before acknowledged in public. Hazel was impacted by Blueface, not just involved in his orbit. People noted how she changed when she talked about him, how she defended him against things she didn't fully understand, and how she avoided saying anything that may upset him. The timeline began to show that Hazel E. and Chrisean weren't insane, but rather in control, as more clips reappeared. On Chrisean's end, supporters started making connections between her most recent composed remarks and past instances in which she appeared to be caught in an emotional loop intended to keep her dependent. They highlighted instances where Blueface rejected her in private and flirted with her in public, where he embarrassed her the next day after encouraging her to fight, where he moved in with someone else. The surprise, however, was that a person close to Hazel E. sent a message to a blog stating that Blueface intentionally kept Hazel in the circle because he desired her audience, connections, and industry reputation. According to the source, he would entice her one day, reject her the next, and then bring her back in whenever he needed a plot point or a boost. He allegedly told her things like, "I got you, you're different and you're solid." But after his objectives were achieved, he allegedly abandoned her. Fans have witnessed Chrisean's manipulating behavior for years. According to Hazel, she felt professionally taken advantage of. Chrisean claimed to feel emotionally exploited. Two distinct perspectives. The same approach. However, the most explosive part of Part 2 was when fans pieced together the chronology of Chrisean's worst breakdowns and Hazel. E's claims that she was being manipulated. And how did it end up? They were overlapping. In order to be popular, current, and at the center of every conversation, Blueface wasn't just switching between women. He was also switching between exploiting them in different ways. At that point, commentary channels entered the conversation and analyzed what they called Blueface's rotation manipulation. They claimed that every woman is kept confused, insecure, and competitive by this revolving emotional cycle without realizing that he is in charge of the story. He treats women like storylines, not people. Fans began to comment. The final blow came when a deleted message from Hazel E's close friends surfaced, revealing that Hazel didn't even realize Blueface didn't care until he tried to twist her emotions as clout chasing. He regularly used the same strategy on Chrisean, accusing her of being crazy, clout hungry, or deluded whenever she spoke her opinions. Despite the fact that he secretly supported her actions for satisfaction, as a result, the internet began to doubt Blueface's entire persona. The fact that Hazel E and Chrisean exposed Blueface's system, a system that drains them and serves him, a mechanism that maintained his popularity while they failed, a system in which they lived inside, a system in which he controlled, the chaos makes Part 2 more potent. Was the bad boy persona merely a front for emotional blackmail? Did he purposefully cause mayhem in order to maintain his relevance? Did he set women against one another so they wouldn't recognize him as the shared issue? And now, for the first time in a long time, Blueface was the target of criticism from blogs, commentary channels, reaction TikTokers, and fan pages. It started with influencers releasing in-depth analyses of Blueface's manipulative patterns, including the love bombing, the chaotic cycles, the deliberate disdain, and the emotional hot and cold conduct designed to keep women in competition. In Part 3, everything Blueface thought he had under control starts to elude him. People who had previously insulted these women said they were reacting to what he orchestrated. This transition changed everything. Viewers who had previously mocked Chrisean Rock's suffering expressed regret in the comment section, saying things like, "You were hurting and we didn't see it. Your entire story was manipulated by Blueface. We defended him and blamed you for years." Chrisean Rock, who had previously been known as the chaotic problem child of the internet, was now being understood, and Hazel E, who had always stayed out of the fray, became the surprise voice that validated everything Chrisean had been trying to express for years. Hazel felt nothing. She wasn't erratic. She wasn't yelling on Instagram Live. Blueface was more impacted by her accusations than by anything Chrisean had said because of her poise, maturity, and consistency. Because Chrisean, being dramatic, was no longer the only explanation. "No, this is his pattern," responded Hazel. As more artists started piecing together the two stories, Blueface realized that he was losing control of the narrative he had always proudly controlled. For the first time, he was unable to use gaslighting or humiliation to drown a woman's feelings. Hazel E had no intention of screaming or fighting. Chrisean was not going to stand up for him this time. Both of them were just ... done. And when ladies become quiet due to emotional exhaustion, the truth becomes loud at that point. The websites then began to delve deeper into Blueface's past behaviors, including videos in which he boasted about not giving a damn. Fans started to comment. "He admitted it years ago, we just didn't take it seriously. He builds these women up so he can publicly break them," after he admitted in some clips that he liked it when women fought for him, and claimed that their disruption was good for business. Suddenly, the clips lost their humor. He uses women's trauma to create content. What is the worst aspect? Everything was completely in line with what Chrisean and Hazel E had said earlier. Meanwhile, Blueface tried, as usual, to distract people from the internet by introducing girlfriends, new lives, and pointless drama, but it didn't work. This time, the audience was not amused. This time, they were not giggling. They weren't taking sides with the women. They had nothing to do with the chaos. They were calling him out. Even fan pages that had previously lauded him immediately changed their thoughts, stating things like, "I see the pattern now. He has been making props out of women. He deserves support, not compassion." Worst of all, public mockery started to show sympathy for the women he had previously controlled. People began praising Hazel E's maturity, encouraging her strength, and expressing regret for not believing her sooner. Despite years of emotional harm, people started to support Chrisean Rock's development, her composure, and her willingness to leave Poison. At this point, Blueface's control over his public persona began to erode, because once women recognized the pattern they were stuck in and ceased competing with men, the man becomes totally powerless. By the end of part 3, it was evident on the internet that Blueface used these women instead of loving them. The only unanswered question is what happens when a drama-loving man finds himself unable to control, divert, or mute the ladies he used to dominate. Since the story is about more than just what Blueface did, that response includes the final call to action. As of right now, the two women have emerged from the mayhem. Both have found clarity. Both have revealed the emotional playbook. And neither is giving in to persuasion. It tells the story of these women's eventual liberation. Here's the complete explanation of how Hazel E. and Chrisean Rock eventually emerged from the mayhem and disclosed the reality that Blueface never intended for the world to come together. However, this story is far from over, I assure you. More receipts are coming to light. The internet is still digging. And both women appear more prepared than ever to take back control of their stories and prevent others from misrepresenting them. Make sure you're locked in right here on Secret Scoop if you want the genuine tea, the unfiltered truth, and updates as soon as they happen. We're not just covering the drama, we're dissecting it, making the connections, and providing you with the complete narrative that the blogs are afraid to discuss. As this situation develops, hit the like, subscribe, and turn on notifications buttons to ensure you never miss an update. Please share your opinions in the comments section. Which side do you support? Do you believe Blueface will be held accountable at last? What do you think Chrisean and Hazel E should do next? This is just the start of the conversation, and Secret Scoop is here to uncover every last detail. Every last detail.